And we're good. Okay, so hello, media sales class. This is James Hunter Boland here. I am doing my sales biography presentation for our assignment that is due this week, the week of the weekend, about to be September 7th through the 9th. It is currently September 6th when I'm doing this presentation. I'm sorry and apologize if this setup with me sitting down is not as good or not professional enough. I am not really a tech whiz yet to figure out how to make this presentation look a lot better. And for some reason, my camera is super blurry, and I do not know how to correct that either. So if there's any kind of quality issues or anything like that, if y'all comment on the video, please kind of give me some tips to help me with that. So when I do more presentations for our class in the future, it looks a lot better, and hopefully that leads to me getting a better grade. But hopefully there's no points deducted or anything like that. I was just trying to do my best with what I have and the knowledge that I possess. So now getting into the presentation itself, I chose to do my sales biography on Phil Knight. If you don't know who Phil Knight is, he is the co-founder of Nike. And he had a long and winding road journey to get to where he is today. And hopefully with this presentation, I can break down the parts of that journey that were significant, his keys to success, and really just kind of break down also my paper in general, and hopefully give y'all a good idea of the kind of salesman that Phil Knight was, the businessman that Phil Knight was, and really what he did to change the world of sports as we see it today. And really just, just the man he was, because he was, or the man he is, he's still alive today, as just an unbelievable person. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. Phil Knight was born on February 24th, 1938. Sorry, 1938. Get my dates mixed up already. He was born there, and he had a passion for sports ever since he was little. And he had the most passion for running, and he loved running. And he took that passion for running all the way to Eugene, Oregon, and he was offered a scholarship to run track at the University of Oregon. And it was at the University of Oregon where he ran for his head coach, Bill Bowerman. And Bill Bowerman was very important as well in Phil Knight's journey, because Bill Bowerman was the guy that Phil co-founded Nike with. As Phil was the co-founder of Nike, Bill was his partner. And so after his running career at Oregon had finished in 4 years, he received his undergrad degree in journalism. And at the time, while he was running, he had a part-time job as a sports journalist for a local newspaper in Eugene that actually, when I looked it up, does not exist anymore. So the times are always changing, and the world is always getting more digital, more technologically sound. And that is really crazy to me that a paper doesn't even exist anymore. That's weird. But as a person with a journalism degree, you would think he would want to be a journalist. But when he graduated college, he really had no idea what he wanted to do with his life, and he was confused. And so he decided to take on a multitude of professions. And his first thing that he did was he enrolled in the Army, and he served 1 year of active duty in the Army, and then served 7 years in the Army Reserves. And so while he was in the Army Reserves, he decided to further his education and maybe help him figure out what he wanted to do with his life. He decided to go to the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. Excuse me. There we go. A little better now. But at Stanford University is finally where Phil found his calling, and where really the idea of Nike was truly born. And that moment happened for him when he was in a class in his graduate program, which was the workings of a small business class. And in that class, their teacher gave them an assignment, and the assignment is what turned the light bulb on for Phil. And that assignment was that the students were tasked to invent a business, describe the business's purpose, and develop a marketing plan for their business. And so as Phil quoted, or as I quoted Phil in the paper for an interview that he did in 1997, that class was an aha moment for him, as for in that class the first time he heard the definition of what an entrepreneur truly is, and he knew that that is what his calling was meant to be, is that he was meant to be an entrepreneur and pursue a dream of really just being a businessman, being a salesman. And so in that class, he used that assignment to come up with the basis, or that base idea for Nike, that first draft for what Nike would end up eventually becoming. And so the paper that he talked about in that interview, that I touched on in my paper as well, was titled, "Can Japanese Shoes Do to German Sports What Japanese Cameras Did to German Cameras?" And so what that paper was all about is how at the time the Japanese were making very high quality athletic shoes for just little to nothing cost, that they were selling and really just knocking off the designs of big companies at the time like Adidas and Reebok and Converse. But the shoes that the Japanese people were making were of better quality probably than than the other companies that were leading the athletic shoe market at the time. And so Phil was very enamored with that, and went on to graduate from Stanford and went back home and listened to his father's advice of getting a steady job. But before he did that steady job, he wanted to go to Japan and see their shoe companies and their shoe factories firsthand. And so that's what he did. He took a trip to Japan. He did a lot of things over there. He fell in love with the Japanese culture. He fell in love with their business practices, and really just knew that this was the right step he needed to take to make his idea a reality. And so he met up with a shoe factory called Osaka Shoes, and they were at the time making shoes called Tigers, which were knockoffs of the Adidas shoes at the time, and were really Adidas at the time was one of the standard bearers and leading the athletic shoe market. And so, as the roommate is coming in, there we go. We good? There's one of my roommates walking in. I'll let her walk out as I'm doing my presentation. Second time I've been interrupted today. I'm in the middle of a presentation, so you got to be quiet. Okay, good. Cool. So she has walked out. All right. Sorry about that. So let me pick up from where I was. So at the time, with this company making these shoes called Tigers, Phil saw an opportunity. And with that opportunity, he made a deal with the Osaka Shoe Company that he would take the Tigers back to America and sell them and start getting those shoes in the American market just to see what they could do, because Phil knew that if he could get this company going, it would be successful. So at the time, he took under the name of Blue Ribbon Sports. He was selling those Tigers in America. But he didn't have a fancy store. He didn't have any fancy signs or any fancy anything. He just had his car and the shoes. And so he would sell the Tigers at track meets all across the Pacific Northwest, or Pacific Northwest, excuse me, and really started growing his business from there. And you could really see his drive and his passion for somebody to do that. He kept his job as an accountant at the time, but he knew that he was going to succeed in selling shoes because he didn't accept failure. And that is something that I really admired about him when I was doing my research, is that, the guy was almost sacrificing everything and selling shoes out of the back of a car to make his dream a reality, to chase something that was worth chasing. And he didn't settle. He never settles. And throughout the research that I did and his long journey to where he is now, he never settled. And that's something that is really, you can admire in a person. And he did amazing things, and willing to do that, to work for, for next to nothing to try to get something off the ground, really is, really is the American dream, if you want to look at it. And so after working and working and working and working, he eventually got up to where he was selling the Tiger shoes and making $1 million a year doing the shoes. And it got to the point where he was actually starting to really make make some headway with this company at the time of Blue Ribbon Sports, selling the Japanese shoes. He connected back with his head coach Bill Bowerman, and really started getting the company to take off a little bit. And he actually opened up 2 retail stores, one in Santa Monica, California, and then one in Eugene, Oregon, to help further the brand of Blue Ribbon Sports. And at the time, his contract was running up back in 1971. So what was to do with the Osaka Shoe Company and the Tigers? Well, they had a little contract dispute, and so Bowerman and Phil Knight decided to go ahead and X that plan and go ahead and found their own company. And at the time, one of their employees had a dream the night before, and came in one day in their office with no name to this company, no nothing. At the time, Phil wanted to name it Dimension 6, and not a lot of people liked that. But one of their employees from Blue Ribbon Sports walked in and said that the word Nike, which was the Greek goddess, the Greek wing goddess of victory, said that the word Nike came to him in a dream, and thought that that is what the name of the company should be. So now that they had a name, they had to have a brand. They had to have something that you could put on a T-shirt, put on the side of a shoe, put on anything, and people would recognize that brand, realize what that brand represented, what that brand meant. And so they went out and they actually purchased the Nike swoosh, which everybody in the world today knows what that swoosh represents and what that swoosh means, for just a mere $35. Which is probably about the price of, a couple going to get a meal at a restaurant nowadays, which is crazy. And so they took the swoosh, and they took the name Nike, and they set off to the 1972 Olympics, because Phil's idea with their product is that they were going to make a shoe and get one of the athletes at the Olympics to model the shoe for them and use it in the Olympics, and hope that idea would develop and get people outside of the Olympics and the world to see that and want to try the shoe for themselves and see what the product was like. And the idea was genius. And so they tapped Steve Prefontaine, who was a long distance runner in the Olympics, to model the first Nike running shoe at the time, which was the Nike Cortez, which is crazy, because, as I said in my introductory video for the class, that I used to work at a Nike retail store, and actually one of the last shoes I bought as an employee was a pair of Cortezes, because they still make them today. They're not a running shoe today because the technology and the shoes have changed, but it's unbelievable the staying power of one shoe that was shown in the 1972 Olympics. Think of it in this context, is that my parents weren't even thinking about marriage, about anything, back in 1972, and now their son, who is 24, has a pair of the same shoes that were debuted back in the 1972 Olympics. That is just nuts, and it's really, really crazy to think that the shoe has that kind of staying power. And that was just really the idea of Phil, and that was really his mindset as a businessman and his marketing plan as a salesman. Really to make a product that he was passionate about, take that product and find the best way to display it and show people that, hey, this is our product, we love our product, this product works, It's used in the Olympics, which is the highest of high in athletic competitions. And if it works for them, it's going to work for you. And you can't deny that because you're watching it on TV. You're seeing this guy run in the Olympics with our new shoe, and it's awesome and it's comfortable and he loves it. And if you buy it, you'll love it too. And that was his thought process. And it really, really works. And so with that, Nike really just started to take off, and it was a boom. And they were starting to make a lot of money. In 1980, they decided to go public. And after they went public, they struggled a little bit. Reebok was in the market, and Reebok was killing it. And so Reebok really was, was in control of the market, and Nike was kind of struggling, and it took a little while to get back to where they were, and that year was 1984 to get back to where they were back in 72. And it was on the shoulders of a 21-year-old kid named Michael Jordan. And if you haven't heard of Michael Jordan, he's probably considered widely as the greatest basketball player to ever live. And what they did was they cut an endorsement deal with Michael Jordan to create a basketball shoe for him that would become known as the Air Jordan. And Michael would wear that shoe and perform in that shoe during the NBA season, and then they would sell that same shoe to customers so they could be like Mike. And by the end of 1984 and 1985, probably every kid in America either A, wanted Air Jordans, or B, had Air Jordans. And it's really just an unbelievable marketing campaign by Nike at the time, and is iconic and groundbreaking. The commercial at the time came out with the campaign of the very iconic "It's Got to Be the Shoes" with Spike Lee and Michael Jordan in the commercial, and it's still, people have fond memories of that today. And so, like, one thing that I really admire about Phil is that he was so passionate about sports and making athletes better that he would take the time to make the shoes that they were going to wear in games and promote to sell to the public, to the general public, fit them and make them perform better and really be something that was iconic and always be able to improve upon. Because every year that Jordan was under contract, they made a new shoe for him. And so you had the Jordan 2, the Jordan 3, the Jordan 4, the Jordan 5, and it kept going on and on and on. And every single shoe is an improvement of the last. And Phil was so passionate about sports and about athletes and about making them better that it rubs off. And people see that. And people saw that when Michael Jordan played. People saw that in the commercials. And people saw that in the way Nike as a company itself handles its business. And it's something that people got behind. And, I mean, you can look back upon millions and millions and millions of commercials and ads and everything, and see the passion that Nike always has for athletics in all of its doings. Like the Bo Knows campaign for Bo Jackson, the Griffey for President I touched on in my paper. And as a young kid, for me, King Griffey Jr. was my hero. As a baseball player in college, he was my favorite baseball player and still is my favorite baseball player of all time. So it's unbelievable just to see how far just one commercial and one shoe can go. And it's really smart for him as a salesman to tap into that. And really, it wasn't smarts or brains. He wasn't trying to con anybody. He was just doing what he loved to do, and he wanted to share that passion and that love for sports and being an athlete and performing your best for everybody and every day. And it's just an amazing journey to see. And so after 84, we go into the 90s. And in the 90s, Nike, with their popularity from Jordan and Bo Jackson, were able to continue to expand. They expanded into sports that back in 72, Nike never touched on. They were really a running and basketball company. Then they started dabbling into football. They started dabbling into hockey, soccer, and then eventually, all sports were covered under Nike. And then also with their marketing budget expanding, they could take their money, start emphasizing more on the design of the product, start making them more unique. Also started emphasizing on fashion, making Nike a fashion statement, making that swoosh something that, when people see it, they know that that's a big deal. And really doing a good job of that. And then Phil's journey continued as the CEO of Nike until 2004. He resigned, but he was still the chairman until 2015. And now Phil just kind of stays a little behind the scenes of Nike here in 2018. And as I say Nike, I know a lot of people right now currently in the media, as in September 6, 2018, know that Nike has come out with a recent marketing campaign of the if you believe in something, you have to sacrifice everything, with Colin Kaepernick as the head of their campaign. And currently right now Nike has lost over $1 billion in stock, and it doesn't seem like it's looking like a good year for Nike. And I touched on this in my paper that a company like Nike will always be able to survive any kind of scrutiny or any kind of like bad press in the media just because of the foundation that Phil set, of being a person that never accepted failure, always was wanting to be bold and be groundbreaking, always was wanting to, share his passion for sport and share his love for sport with customers, always wanting to persevere and just really never giving up. And so for every, setback, I like the old saying, for every one step back, he took 2 steps forward. And that is so true with Phil Knight. Every one step back he took 2 steps forward. And so I think right now with Nike, where it is as a company with this campaign, is it going to take a hit? Absolutely. But as a foundation, as a company, it's not going anywhere. It's still the giant. It owns 60% of the shoe market. It is a brand that is iconic, not just in America. It's iconic all over the world, and all that comes back to the mind of Phil Knight. And as I finish this presentation up, I want to talk about a great YouTube video that I watched that I would encourage all of you to watch as well, and especially if you're an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, or if you're in the world of sales, because I'm pretty sure all of us will be at some point in our lives, because I really do like what Dr. Fortenberry touched on, that all communication involves sales and persuading people. And so the great video I watched, if you want to go onto YouTube, is where I watched it, because we've been watching a lot of great videos on YouTube for this class so far, is Phil Knight's 10 Rules for Success. And I'll touch on them really quickly as I wrap this presentation up. His first rule of success is have a crazy idea. And it was a crazy idea for him to start a shoe company as a kid that really didn't know what he wanted to do with his life until he heard one speech from a professor. And he had this crazy idea. And, a lot of people probably would have given up at the first setback or the second setback or the third setback, but he ran with this crazy idea and he never gave up. Number 2 for his 10 rules for success is get the right people. As a salesman, as we're learning here on what media sales is, I think it's always important to have a good team around you, because you can be a solo act in sales, but the more support you have with the people around you, the better your team will be, the better your company will run. And Phil was very, very, very key on that, of getting the right people around him. Number 3, build a great product. From the get-go, Nike was about building the ideal and perfect running shoe. And if you go back and watch the video that I'm talking about right now, when he talks about this point, he says a lot of Nike's early spending money wasn't on advertising, because Phil himself really wasn't that good at advertising, key at advertising, which is funny to say, even though he had created all these iconic ads. He wasn't really the best at advertising. He was more of focusing on building the best product. So a lot of Nike's money was invested in making the best running shoe. And so with that in mind, they wanted to build that great product. And in sales, if you can build a great product, when you're going out and selling it, you don't have to lie. You don't have to coerce people into, using that product, just hoping it works. Like, you can go out there and you can say, like, hey, I know for sure it's going to work because it's a great product. And that's why Phil was so successful, is because he took the time to make sure that his product was awesome, and knew that when he was telling people about it and talking to these athletes about wearing it and promoting it, that he would be able to sell it because it was that good of a product. Number 4, have a reason to succeed. Excuse me. Always have a goal. Always find something that keeps you going. Always have that dream to grab that brass ring, whatever analogy you want to use for yourself that motivates you to get you off the couch to go do something. That is what that key means. Because if you're not fighting for something, then why are you fighting? And that's something that was touched on in the video, stuck out with me, and I like it. And I have goals for myself, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this class, and even Dr. Fortenberry, he has goals for this class too. And everybody has goals for their life, and that's what really drives them every day when they get out of bed. And it's always good to have something to push you forward, even when you feel like you can't go any further. Number 5, persevere. That goes back with Phil never wanting to give up and never accepting failure as an option. From starting to, a lot of people probably giving up if they had to resort to selling shoes out of the back of their car, but he didn't. And he knew there was a greater purpose, and he was always chasing something, and he always had to push through and persevere. Number 6, define your values. Always make sure that as a salesman, we're learning, or a saleswoman, we're learning to, know your values and trust your values and never stray from them when it comes to the world of sales and when you're making a sale. Do not lie. Do not cheat your way to a sale, because it won't feel good. It's not what you stand for. And you'll get more sales and build better relationships in sales if you stand on your values and you have good, true values. So if you define what your values are and then you stand by your good, true values, then you'll be able to present yourself and present your company or your product in good eyes, and people will know and trust you for what you're saying, because your values are true and you're a true person. Number 7, get help. It's always good to ask questions. I love the saying that there's never a dumb question, and some may laugh at that, but it's always good to ask questions. In my current job right now, I don't know anything really, and so my job right now is just to find out everything. So I have to ask dumb questions every day and get as much help as I can as possible. And then in return, one day, I hopefully am the person answering those dumb questions, because I will have learned a lot from the people who helped me, and then I can help the people in the future that are learning from me. And so it's always good to have as much help as possible and to never be a lone wolf. Number 8, stand for something. That also goes back with the number 6 of the define your values. You want to stand for something, stand for what you believe in, stand for your values, really. Number 9 is compete. Everybody loves to compete. I mean, competing is, I think, what drives us. And especially in the world of sales, you got to be willing to compete. You can't settle for second. You can't settle for third. You have to be number 1. You got to go out there. And you can't do it by, walking in the back door, or telling a little white lie every now and then to get a step ahead. Like, you can't do that. You gotta be passionate about what you're doing. You gotta have heart. You gotta work for it, and you gotta really believe in the product you're selling. And you gotta go out there with a mindset of competing and doing things the right way, and never settling, never accepting failure. And that's what Phil did, and that's why I love number 9. Compete. It's probably my favorite out of the 10 rules for success. And then the last one is know your mission, which still goes back to the values thing. Know what you're standing for, know what you're representing, know what your brand represents. And if you do that as a salesman, you'll be able to succeed, and there's no one that can stop you. And so overall, as I wrap this up again, just to say, like, what I learned from Phil is that from my time working at Nike, I love the idea of the first day when we were there. They told us that Nike's number 1 key to slogans is that if you have a body, you're an athlete. And I feel like that came directly from Phil himself. They never told us who that came from, but I like to feel like that came from Phil himself, because after reading the research, he really was wanting to make sure that every athlete, whether it was an Olympian or was it just average Joe who was trying to get in better shape, had the best equipment, had everything that they needed to succeed. And he was passionate about that, and he took that passion and he ran with it in the world of sales and in the world of business, with his marketing, with his advertising, with his research and labs, to make sure that his product was great, that it could perform for people, so he wouldn't have to go out and lie and say that this product was probably the best. Like, he could go out and say, no, this product is the best. And I admire that a lot about him. He was able to always compete with his competitors and never let a setback really hurt him, and was really just inspiring to me that, you know, you can go from selling shoes out the back of your car to building a headquarters that's worth, you know, so many $1 billion, and that's amazing, that people always want to travel to and see. And, you know, it's crazy that that all started, and this whole brand of Nike started in the back of a car selling knockoff Adidas made in Japan. And it's really crazy how the journey from that goes to where we are now. And I think that shows why Phil Knight should be considered one of the greatest salesmen in history and should always be put up there on the Mount Rushmore of people who, if you want to get a blueprint of how to run a business and how to be a salesman, you should always go to him first and look at that. So thank y'all for y'all's time. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. If y'all do comment on my video, respond to my video, let me know what I did wrong. Let me know what you liked. Let me know of any kind of way to make my video production look a little bit better, so next time I'm not as blurry. Hopefully y'all can hear me as well. Thank you, Dr. Fortenberry, for the assignment, and hope all y'all enjoyed this. My name is James Hunter Boland again, and I'll see y'all next time.